Good morning. Today we are going to do an easy, simple 2-point perspective project drawing a Rubik's Cube. Hi, Gus. All right, so let's get started. First of all, we're using a piece of paper from our mixed media pad. We're going to flip the paper over and use our red extender paper. We're going to position the extension paper about an inch from the bottom of our paper. So you can give yourself a little mark. Close is close enough, but your paper should be about an inch above the bottom. Now we're going to tape it down in a couple of places. And it should be pretty close to equal on both sides. Close is close enough. Now the first thing that we're going to do is establish our horizon line. The nature of a horizon line is that it is perfectly horizontal. We're going to position the horizon line so that it is more or less in the middle of our red extender strip. And just draw a nice light, this is a construction line, that goes across the paper. We're going to extend this line all the way to the end of our red extender strip, and then identify a little point at the end of our extender strip as the right vanishing point. And do the same on the left, extending the horizon line all the way to the extender. Give ourselves a little dot. And right, left, vanishing point. We can go ahead and notate the horizon line, which goes from left to right vanishing points. And this is also called the eye line. The horizon line divides the sky from the ground, but it also identifies the position that a person who is viewing this is their eye line. So the first thing that we're going to draw is we are going to draw the front corner of our Rubik's Cube. It's going to be nice and big. We want that front corner to be perfectly vertical. All of our lines in 2-point perspective are either vertical or they go toward the vanishing point. So come down from your horizon line so that you're, I don't know, maybe a ½ inch plus or minus off of the bottom of your paper, and then maybe an inch plus or minus. Close is close enough. I'm a little bit longer than an inch. It doesn't really matter. But go ahead and give yourself little tick marks at the top of your corner line. And then we're just making a simple box. So now that we've established the corner of our Rubik's Cube, then the right side, top and bottom, will extend to our vanishing point. And same thing with the bottom. It'll extend to our vanishing point. And then the left side will also extend this time to our left vanishing point. So using your ruler, make sure that your ruler is right on both spots, the left vanishing point and the top of your corner line. It's super important to be careful and accurate, particularly with your right and left vanishing points. Right now, the side looks like it just extends forever. We're going to put a line here that's vertical that indicates where that Rubik's Cube stops. Right there. It should be perfectly horizontal, which means it should be parallel to the edge of the paper. And then we're going to put another line on over here, and just by looking at it, I can tell this looks pretty much like what a square would be, but you have to kind of eyeball this side to try to decide where the edge of that cube is, if it's actually a cube versus if it's a rectangle. So just looking at it, it looks to me like the edge of the cube would be about here. So for mine, it's a full ruler width and then maybe a half ruler width, plus or minus. Close is close enough. And you can go ahead and draw that line. That looks pretty good as a cube. Now you can come back and you can erase your construction lines. And we have a nice cube. Because our corner line extended above and below our eye line, we actually don't see the top and we don't see the bottom of the cube. We only see the right and left sides. If this was a cube that was higher up on our paper and was completely above our our horizon line, then we would see the bottom. If the cube was moved all the way down below the horizon line, we would see the top of the cube. So now we're going to break this into segments just like a Rubik's Cube. And so it's a Rubik's Cube has 1, 2, 3 by 1, 2, 3 squares on each side. So we're going to use our ruler and see if we can break this line into 3 equal-ish parts. So it looks like I'm measuring mine, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4.5 inches. Now yours might be a little bit more or it might be a little bit less, but if you divide the distance, this is the distance from top to bottom, that corner line, into 3 equal-ish pieces, then we'll have 1, 2, 3 equal pieces for our Rubik's Cube. So it should be, if my math serves me right, 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches takes me to 1/3, and then 1.5 inches takes me 2/3 of the way down, and then I have 1.5 inches left over. That I just kind of got lucky with that. Super happy about that because I'm an artist. I am not a mathematician. So now that I've established that this is my corner line broken into thirds, then I can take my ruler and extend construction lines from my little tick marks to the left-hand side, vanishing point. And I can do the same thing over here. I'm drawing lightly because these are construction lines. Just like that. And just so that I don't get confused, I'm going to go ahead and erase the part of my horizon line that is on top of my Rubik's Cube. Just the part that overlaps my Rubik's Cube. I'm going to leave the horizon line back here. Now what I'd like to do is to break my right side into 3 equal parts. So there's kind of a clever way to do this. If I wanted to break the right side into equal halves, check it out, follow along. Really lightly, draw a line from corner to corner. And then draw a line from opposite corners, like so. When you do that, then wherever these 2 lines intersect, makes an X. If you make a vertical, that is your halfway point. So the right-hand side can be divided equally in half using this method, and this distance is equal to this distance in reality if we were to actually measure it. There's distortion because that whole side is in perspective. So instead of looking at it like this, you're looking at it like this. And so the distance in this second half appears to be smaller, and the distance in this first half appears to be bigger because objects that are closer to the viewer appear bigger, objects that are closer to in the distance appear to be smaller. So that is why that appears differently, and it appears differently accurately because we measured it. Now, if you take a line from your center point at the top down to the corner, where this line crosses your x, that should divide it into thirds. And similarly, if you draw a line from your bottom right-hand corner up to your halfway mark, where this line crosses your x, that should divide it into thirds. So now we have equal parts in reality, but distorted by perspective. We're going to do the same thing on this side over here. So first we're going to divide it in half by making a big X from corner to corner and finding that midpoint where the X marks the spot. So the X is right here in the middle, and that would be our halfway point. So we have two equal halves in perspective, but we actually want to have thirds in perspective. So we're going to make another construction line from our bottom corner up to our halfway line. And where that new line crosses the X, that gives us the first third. We're going to do the same thing from the bottom left corner up to our halfway point. This is our X marks the spot, go straight up. Where that line crosses the big X, that is going to be a third. Now we have quite a few construction lines in here, so let's go ahead and erase those construction lines so that they don't get confusing. And there is a perfect Rubik's Cube, perfect enough, in 2-point perspective. So let's go ahead and use our thick and thin Sharpies. We're going to use the thick one to give us the profile, and I'm going to show you a little trick. So Rubik's Cubes aren't actually completely straight, right? They're made up of different segments, and between each segment there's a little dip. So I'm going to take my thick Sharpie, I'm going to run it across the top until I hit my little, the end of my little Rubik's Cube squares, and then I'm going to dip down and dip up in a little V shape. Dip down, dip up, and then come on up here to the top. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Dip down, dip up, dip down, dip up. I'm going to do the same thing for all of my profile lines. The profile line is so important, and if you can tell the viewer a little bit more about the material that you're using by creating those little dips or other little telltale signs, then it's going to be super powerful. Okay, and maybe I'll go over that, really thicken it up. Really make that profile line powerful. Okay, now down here where the Rubik's Cube is sitting on the ground, I'm going to do the same thing, but since it's sitting on top of another surface, there's not air or space around it, then I'm going to just use the tip of my Sharpie. I really like to have, personally, a really thick profile line when there's air around an object. When an object is sitting on something else or coming into contact with another surface, then I use a thinner profile line. Always looks really good. Okay, now I'm going to use the same approach using my thick Sharpie in this center line. This is my corner line. And maybe I'll do a little diamond. Okay. And I think I'll do that same kind of approach on my individual segments as well. So, turn my paper. Now, I personally always like to combine my thick and thin Sharpie. So since each of these Rubik's Cubes has like a little sticker on it, then I'm just going to come in and I'm going to give myself a little X, or sorry, give myself a little square. Sometimes it's hard for me to talk at the same time as I'm drawing lines. You can do this freehand the way that I'm doing, or if you would rather, then you can use your ruler. Just keep in mind that all of these lines follow the rules of 2-point perspective, which means that all of the lines that are vertical are perfectly vertical, and all of the lines that are not vertical are going to the horizon, to the vanishing points. And the last thing that I'm going to do is take my ruler, lay it down, and using my thin Sharpie, I'm going to just go over the horizon line that is in the background. I'm purposefully using a thin Sharpie because that's what we use for either details, objects that are flat, or a line which is in the distance. So since we have this nice thick line up here showing the profile of the object, then the horizon line is in the distance, further away, and appears smaller, so I'm using my thinner Sharpie. Great. If you would like to, you can use color pencil, or you can use your acrylic markers and color your Rubik's Cube.